Hey, it's Andrew here, and welcome to the E-commerce Fuel Podcast, a show dedicated to helping 7 and 8-figure brand owners build incredible businesses and amazing lives. And in our community, we've got a community of about 1,200 store owners at this point. We've always been very particular about rarely letting in non-store owners. There's a handful in, but what we're pretty strict about requiring store owners to come in. It's just it creates a great culture. There's a lot of common shared interests. It just works well. But rarely we'll make exceptions. And one of our top members, Susan Hayes, reached out to us about 6 months ago and said, "Hey, I know this woman who's a fantastic technical SEO. She's giving, she's wonderful. I think you should make an exception for her." And so we did. We brought her in. She was kind enough to come in and has been a phenomenal contributor, community member, and just voice of wisdom in the community over the last 6+ months. And very excited to have her on the show today. And that is Alana Davis. She's the owner of AlanaDavis.com, where she helps with JSON for Shopify, especially CRO, website redesign thoughts, and all things technical SEO. She also has a couple of Shopify apps, JSON LD for SEO and Linking Llama, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm so excited to have her on to geek out about the technical side of SEO in general. We're going to talk about some markup and some schema stuff, and also about website redesigns and how they don't have to be the world's most beautiful objects to actually work well. So, Alana, thank you for coming on. I'm looking forward to this. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and people who can't see the YouTube version of this, you've got, I mentioned this at the top, but you've got a really cool backdrop. Most people have like super boring books or things that make them look like they spent 4 years locked in the library. You look like you have a lot of fun based on your backdrop, which is like a bunch of Legos and cool things. Can you, for people who can't see, what's one of your, I asked you this earlier, but what's one of your 1 or 2 favorite things that you've got on that kind of cool shelf behind you?
Those who can see it, it's like right here. This is a new Lego build. It's actually the Lego shop. So like if you're going to like a Lego store, this is an actual Lego store. And I thought that one was really fun. But yeah, I have a ton back here. I have like Main Street and I have apartment buildings and I have bakeries and I'm actually working on a police and donut shop right now. And I have another one that I'm working on soon too, a whole boutique hotel. So lots of fun stuff that we do here. My family, we all do Legos. And then I have some like flowers and Muppets and whatnot. But I also have, rubber ducks behind me. There's a old thing with developers where you have to rubber duck something. And that's basically you're talking to someone to try to talk out loud so that you can try to figure out your problem. So I have a whole bunch of rubber ducks that are behind me as well.
I don't think that's just developers. I think there's a lot of people like that. Here, a little rabbit trail here, but man, you think about Legos. If you think about, obviously, I played as Legos. It was fun. I kept them, gave them to my kids, which is kind of cool. They're super fun just to play with. But you think about from a business perspective. I mean, is there a better moated brand? There probably is, but I would say Lego is probably one of the top 10 moated brands in terms of their name recognition. Like the amount that people, when I say people, I'm referring to myself. I just don't want to admit it. We'll pay for like a 400-piece Lego kit is just absurd. So they got great branding. They have a great moat in terms of, I'm guessing I'm not a manufacturing expert, but the molds you have to build to create the thousands, if not tens of thousands of pieces, huge CapEx moat for manufacturing. The distribution, I don't know, it just seems like such a good brand. If I could invest in Lego, I don't know if they're publicly traded, maybe they're owned by one of the big public companies, but I know they're such a fantastic case study in building a business.
And their experience is phenomenal. I've actually written about Lego a couple different times in how they, like the books that they create and the detail that they put into their instructions and making sure that you can build it without having to, contact support or whatever. But then have issues with the bricks that you've received, you just call them up and they'll send you new ones. There's no questions asked. It's like super easy. But yeah, just the recognition that they get from how they build their products themselves, but then also the metaphors that come from their brands as well, of like, the Lego building blocks of marketing or whatever. They've just really built this name for themselves that is used in so many different facets in so many different ways, and I love it.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. I mean, we should do do a breakdown. Might have to do a brand breakdown just on Lego, because they're such an iconic, timeless brand. I'd love to kick things off talking about kind of just SEO in general and get your thoughts. We're going to dive into all the technical side here in a minute, but at a high level, I've said this on the show before, but really all my businesses I've ever built have been almost largely on the backs of SEO over the years. And some for great, some for, I think I left a lot of money on the table by not doing any paid traffic. But so have understood it pretty well, have gotten a little rustier in the last 5 years. The last 9 months or so, we really kind of sat down and invested heavily in SEO again, in terms of putting out content, in terms of working with writers, trying to really do great writing, do it the right way. And after about 6 months of it, man, we were looking at the results, and just based on the amount of energy and work and time we put in, granted, 6 months is a relatively short amount of time for SEO. Usually you're thinking for this to be payback, you're looking, 12, 18 months to see the full results, but you should be able to starting to see some kind of results in the 3-month window. And so on a 3 to 6 month window, just the results that we saw based on the ROI and spending, despite having great team members working on it, it was rough. And diving in and looking at the landscape, even from 3-4 years ago, just, even a number 5 ranking is not what it used to be. So much more crowded. And I know it's very in vogue. It has been for years. The sky is falling. Email marketing is dead. SEO is dead. All these kind of things throw them by the wayside. But I will say, for the first time ever, I have thought, does it make sense to continue to, I've thought seriously about, should we scrap our SEO investments and put them more into the podcast and to just improving our product, which propels word of mouth, and working on our email list and SMS, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Obviously, SEO still works for a lot of great people. And a little more context, we've got a good domain authority. We're at 72, 73 domain authorities. So we should be able to rank with on topical issues that are well optimized. Anyway, I just threw a lot at you there. What do you think about that? I mean, obviously, SEO is your bread and butter, and so I'm kind of putting you in a hard spot here. But how much harder have you seen it get over the last 3 or 4 years?
Well, and you mentioned domain authority, so I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. Domain authority is a made-up number. Google doesn't use it, so it's something like speed scores where it makes us feel good, right? So not to discount. I get it, and I don't blame you for wanting to look at your domain authority, but that doesn't matter to Google. So if you focus on things that matter to Google, that's where you're going to find the biggest leaps and bounds of your progress. I do think that SEO is still important, but what people often do is they try to get ranked number 1 or top 10 or whatever. But that first page of Google doesn't even exist anymore, because now it's a continuous scroll in many cases. And so people aren't realizing that they're, clicking on page 4. So you're, 40 links down or whatever. They're just scrolling down looking for titles or descriptions that might make sense to them. So it's okay if you're not number 1 or number 5 or number 10, especially because of all the ads that they're doing. And especially with e-commerce, where you have ads that are thrown into the mix of a whole bunch of different search results, not just the top 3 or 2, whatever it used to be. But I think what really people forget about is that you don't have to be ranked number 1. You do have to write content that people want to click on. And that's what's most important. So when you're building out your SEO strategy, it should revolve around what is best for your customers and not what is best for Google, because Google wants what's best for your customers too. So look at writing content that is built for them and the questions that they're asking, and you will succeed. But if you write content or you try to manipulate the search result so that you rank a certain way, I just don't think you're going to find the success that you want to do. And that's where, I talk with a lot of my customers for one of my apps with Jason LD for SEO about, you don't have to be ranked number 1, but the more information that you have in your search result that people actually want to know about, the higher the chance you're going to get a click. And that's where you want them to go to.
Yeah, let's dive into the JSON and the markup side of things.
Yeah.
So for people who aren't super familiar, or maybe are kind of just passingly familiar with it, when you say JSON's like a data format, a standardized data format that you can store things in.
Yep.
what is JSON and the different schema markups? Give people a little bit of context for what they are and how they apply to SEO and doing SEO well.
Yeah. So JSON is, and it is JSON. Just for those, I just sort of pronounce it Jason. So sorry if I'm confusing anyone. But JSON is a structure, is a format. But JSON LD is a way to link that data. So it is the format that is in a structured way, so that Google knows what your title is. So it's like a matching game, right? Where you're saying your title is this, your description is this, your price is that. So you can link data between different parts of your website, which then puts it all into one JSON piece of code. Super confusing. You don't have to know it. It's totally fine. But really what the goal there is to say is that you want to try to provide as much information to Google as you possibly can, whether that is in a JSON LD format, or there's also called microdata or RDFA. JSON LD is just the easiest way to read it, and that's why it's so popular and why Google recommends that you use JSON LD for your websites as opposed to any of the other options. So basically, the app, what it does is it creates this structured data, it puts it into a format that Google can read, and you qualify for different types of what's called search enhancements or rich results. So I mentioned earlier about showing more information on search results that people actually care about. That's things like price. They want to know the price. They want to know your reviews. They want to know if it's in stock. And now Google is pulling information from Merchant Center as well to show your delivery and your returns information. So it's really just like another search enhancement, a way to kind of up level your search results. So it's not a boring plain result, but actually showing them more information when they have an intent to actually buy your products, or, you know, if you're looking at a video or a recipe or whatever. There's 30 different types of rich results that you can qualify for.
Is someone who's running Shopify, because you use primarily focus on the Shopify ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's, they got a Shopify store, isn't Shopify injecting all this JSON by default in most themes or templates into the website, you know, for price, for amount in stock, out of stock? You know, if you're using Yappo or you know, some other review app, it's going to also inject that into the code base. Isn't it doing that by default for any decent code setup?
Decent code setup. Yes, that's the, that's the operative word right there. Yes, 100%. You are very much correct, Andrew. All themes are required to provide product structured data. It is a requirement to get into the theme store. So if you're outside of the theme store, I can't vouch for that. But not all structured data is created equal. So they're only required to have the data. They're not required to make sure it's complete, or that it's valid, or that it's good. So, or good enough, right? So there's a lot of things that many themes are missing, and that's why people still come to my app. You know, I wish Shopify, if you're listening, you should put this on every store. It should be required for every theme to have a full and complete set. Put me out of business, please, because I do genuinely believe that everyone should have this out of the box. But that's just not how it operates. And themes don't understand the structured data enough to know what they're missing. So I am seeing more and more themes that are trying to include more information in their structured data. And I'm seeing them start to include FAQs, which is fantastic. So you can qualify for an FAQ rich result. It's hard to do, but you can. But structured data is not just for search results. It's also for Merchant Center. And it's also for a million other things. But there are thousands of different types of schema markup that you could put into your structured data. But Google only uses a certain amount. So the issue here is that you have to make sure that it's complete, and that the stuff that is missing for Merchant Center gets added. And by that, I'm talking about things like you need to have your unique product identifiers for your GTIN or MPN. You need to have your price valid until. If you have multiple variants, you have to make sure that each of those variants have unique URLs in the structured data. So there's a lot of like pieces that, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But there's a lot of pieces that go into that that's not just done automatically with themes, and that's where they're missing a lot of those things.
Got it. What are some of the, I mean, you mentioned the just dozens, if not hundreds of different, markups and data that you can provide in this structured format. What are some of the things that are not necessarily product specific, but are help with ranking, maybe for content pages? Maybe somebody's doing a blog and they're trying to really get that to rank well. Is that as important for this kind of stuff for, let's just say, pure content or video pages, or is this primarily most important on physical product, like the product page for a Shopify store?
No, you could put it on any page on your website. The only one that's really difficult to get a rich result for or search enhancement for is the collection page. There isn't a rich result that Google has for collections or categories. But you can add video, you can add how-to, you can do FAQs, recipes, blog posts or articles. We also do article on pages. But one thing you said, and I wanted to make sure I touch on this too, structured data does not impact rankings directly. It is an indirect impact. So the structured data doesn't actually decide, do you have enough that you could rank higher or lower? What it is that, as I mentioned before, you get more clicks. And then when you get more clicks, that's how you get better ranking over time. So it's an indirect relationship. But it is definitely not just for product. I talk about product mostly because that's where most people care about is their product. But if you're, a content heavy website and or you want to supplement some of your traffic to your blogs or your pages, it's equally important to make sure that it's on there as well.
Maybe you could give us the most, or in your opinion, one of the most impactful markups or schema that structured data you could include on, let's say a category page for a Shopify site, let's say maybe even a home page if that's applicable, and then maybe a blog post page. So or a content, it could be about us, could be a blog post. So those 3 pages: home page, category page, content page. What kind of things should people be thinking of that can help them stand out more in the results with that structured data?
Yeah. So this one, for the homepage, I would say everyone should have what's called a website markup. That is for your site link search box. It's incredibly hard to get. So don't stress if you don't have this, but you should have it if you can. So if you're doing a Google search, if you search for Shopify on Google, you'll see a search box on their result, their top result. And Andrew's searching for it right now for those. I am. So you should see a search box, right? So if you were to type something directly into that, you're actually going to search on Shopify's website directly. Smaller sites, it's incredibly hard to get. And so if you don't have that, it's okay. Don't stress about it, but you should have the markup for it nonetheless. And then also on the homepage, everyone should have their organization data. This is like your business information. So your address, your phone number, your hours, if you're a local business, those sort of things, your website, everything should be on that. And we actually put the organization on every page because it helps to populate it links together with your other information as a way to promote who you are and why this product is the same thing as your company. So I would say that's probably the 2 biggest things for your homepage that everyone should have. Again, there are some themes that don't include that, but most of them do. For your collection, this one's my favorite because people are often trying to get rich results on collections that don't exist. So what I recommend is use your content on your collection to your advantage. So if you don't have a collection description, make sure you put one on there. Then what you can do is at the bottom of the page, add something like FAQs or something like that, where you can create more content around it. And then you can actually add FAQ structured data, which then qualifies that collection page for FAQ rich result. Again, FAQs are really hard to get right now. They are still giving them, but Google has said that they might get rid of it. But that more content, even if you add the structured data and you don't get the rich result, that's more content for your collection page, which then would help you rank for those keywords that you might want to do.
And how does the FAQ actually show up in the search result pages? Is it kind of like, let me go back to go back to what I was just looking at. I lost it. Is it kind of just a list of questions with drop downs that kind of accordion style expand for your
It
FAQs?
is an accordion. Yeah, it's an accordion. It's typically only two questions that will show up. So like you have to, for you to be able to see it, you have to really type in a specific keyword. So I don't know if I actually still have it on mine, but I used to have a FAQ rich result for how to install JSON LD for SEO. And I'm trying to look right now to see if I still have it. And I don't. It's gone away. But the FAQ looks like there's going to be a description which should match similar to what your question is. So it should be related to that. And then you're going to have two results underneath it that are typically other questions that could be related. You cannot control what shows up, but you can like add the FAQ markup to be able to qualify for it.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, great.
So that was collection. The other thing I would say for collection is if you have a video, make sure you add your video markup as well. But I would say videos are probably few and far between for collections.
Quick interruption here. Yeah. When you think about video, people are going to be, I guess 80% of people are probably embedding video on YouTube, maybe less than that, but 50% plus definitely. You probably have some Wistia people in there, maybe some Vimeos. Are those native embed codes that you're going to use, are they going to have that markup already built into them or no?
No, YouTube does not. I'm trying to think if Vimeo does. I haven't seen one recently that does. I think it's typically something you have to add. I don't know about Wistia. That's actually pretty few and far between for me to see those. But no, as far as I've seen, no. There are some themes that try to add in the video markup when you add a video, but everyone that I've seen does it wrong. They're missing information because Shopify doesn't provide that information to you. Again, I'm talking about Shopify. I don't work outside of Shopify, so I can't speak to other platforms, but so that's one of the reasons why we have an I keep saying FAQ, video generator through JSON LD for SEO so that you can generate that markup and be able to put it into your store directly. But yeah, as far as I know, I don't know of a single video platform that does it for you. But since we're talking about video is what I was going to say on blogs and pages, blogs and pages. But those are so critical for you to be adding to your blogs and pages because you can, if you just put your YouTube video on your page or your blog, you'll likely rank that video. It'll show up because YouTube will show up automatically for you. But you don't want people to go to your YouTube channel. You want them to come to your website. And so when you add that structured data for your video, your website can actually show up instead of the YouTube link, which is what you want. So that's why it's beneficial to add it to your blogs and pages as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you're doing, let's say you're doing it on a Shopify blog page, or let's just say you're doing it on the product page. You've got an amazing flamethrower. Elon Musk has hired you to market his flamethrowers. And so you embed your YouTube video there. Are you able to just from the markup perspective or the JSON perspective? I'm using markup, JSON, and Schema all kind of like intermixed. I'm sure I'm getting
everyone does. No, you're doing great.
Sure, I'm butchering the correct one for this specific use case. But the fancy data we're talking about,
yes,
fancy data as a catch-all. Can you put that just in the code, kind of above and below it with the appropriate HTML tags with the JavaScript tags, and it's good to go? Or is there more like what's the workflow for someone who wants to start actually doing this today in their Shopify store?
Yeah, so you could write the code yourself. You don't have to use my app, and you don't have to try to use our generators to do this stuff for you. You can actually go and you can, there are schema generators for you that are out there that will generate this code. And then when you're in Shopify, if you go into the HTML view of your product description or your blog post description, you can actually just copy and paste your script into that because it's just HTML code. That's all that it is. So you can absolutely do it yourself if you know how to code or if you want to use one of those generators. The reason why I still recommend using an app like JSON LD for SEO or any other app if they'll do it for you is that if the code breaks, you're not on the hook for it. You don't have to try to figure out what's wrong. You can let the app help and decipher what's going on with that. So that's one of the reasons why it's great to use an app for something like this. But not all apps are created equal, so you have to make sure that you're using an app that's not going to slow down your site and blah 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 blah.
So when you said, so what would the workflow be like with your app? You go in, Do you give it like, hey, here's the YouTube video? It asks you, I'm
Yeah.
guessing this just ask a series of questions. You input the text and it spits out all of the embed code for the page and just bam like that.
Yeah, so we actually use meta fields for ours. So it's exactly as you describe it. We have a page on there, for example, that you go in and you copy and paste all your values. So you'll paste in your title, when it was uploaded, the URL that you're pulling it from, if it's YouTube or Vimeo or whatever, a description, and then we'll actually create a hash for it. We default to a video so that you can link to it. Remember, I talked before about being able to link data. This is how you can link to it that way and add more if you need to. But we then give you an output that you copy and paste into a meta field, and then you put that meta field into that page or wherever you're going to put it into, and then we generate the structured data behind the scenes.
So, do you actually need, if it's all copy and paste and it creates the perfect schema for you? I mean, it's a Shopify app, but you could ostensibly use this for WooCommerce, for Magento, for WordPress, any site, right?
Our app, no, you can't. But the end result of creating the schema, absolutely, you could do that, because there's a lot of tools that are out there, and I'm trying to think of them. But if you just search for a JSON LD generator or something like that, I bet you can find ones that would be very similar to this, where you can copy and paste and put in your information, and it's going to output what looks like JSON code, and then you can just copy and paste it into the HTML. Yeah.
Do you have a resource, or can you point people to a resource? Like, I'm thinking about this and I think it'd be amazing to be able to go through and look at the shopping list, the buffet of all the things that we should be adding, right? And some of them probably don't make, if you did all of them, you're probably not getting the best 80-20 for your buck, but to do a lot of these, I've been missing them for a long time. Where's the best place to go and look through all the different important markup options that you could be considering for different types of pages? What's the best way for people to think, hey, what are we missing here? And let's prioritize what we want to add.
Yeah. So for my app, we have an actual page that is types of structured data or types of rich results that you can qualify for with Shopify. That's the name of it if you wanted to search for it. We already provide all of the data that you need to be able to qualify for things for Shopify. But if you're outside of Shopify or you want something different, really the best place to go to is Google. And I'll send you the link, Andrew, so you can put it into the notes. They have all 30 of their different options of different types of search enhancements that you can get. It's hard though, because Google doesn't make it so like, oh, here's exactly the information I need. You have to be able to understand what is required, what's not required, how to get that data so that you're not hand coding it for every single page. So like with Shopify, there's liquid code to be able to pull out the title. That way you don't have to type in the title manually. So there are definitely ways for you to do it. But just because you can put the structured data into your website doesn't mean it's going to add any value if it's not related. And then you're not actually like people, let me phrase this differently. People will say there is a schema markup for collection page. I want to add collection page to my collections. Well, great. You can do that, but there's no rich result for a collection page. So if you want to add the code, go ahead and do it, but it's literally time wasted for you. You can spend your time on something else. So it's not as simple as what's the markup that I can add. It's what's the markup that I can add that will actually add value to my website. And that's where it's a challenge, and why you want to talk with someone who actually knows what they're doing with these things, so that you're not spending your time creating all this code for no reason. I will absolutely send you the link, Andrew, so that people can go look at Google's docs, but that's where it's like a little bit of a challenge.
Got it. That totally makes sense. Thank you. Let's kind of pivot a little bit to talking about just getting more traffic in general. And we're going to be talking about here from more of a technical standpoint, SEO. I think most people listening, many of them, if not most of them, are store owners or business owners, probably understand the very basics of SEO, right? Like, you need to have a title that isn't awful, right? Like, make a title that's clickable. Have some, I'm not sure how much metadata is getting actually pulled from Google from the ones that you set, the meta description versus gets dynamically generated, but title is super important, probably keyword basics, things like that. Talking less about the content side and more about the technical side of things. What are like the top 3 things that you would love to see a site focus on that's struggling to rank on the technical side to improve those rankings?
So I mean, it sounds weird because it is my app. I would 100% say your structured data because again, even though it doesn't impact your ranking, having that information in there helps Google to understand because they're not having to guess. They're not having to read through your content to make interpretations. You're actually telling them, here's what these fields mean. So I would definitely say your structured data. The other thing that people don't always pay attention to, I think, is around your internal links. So making sure that you're actually going back to your articles, going back to your products and collections, and making sure that you're connecting dots for people. So what I'm talking about with this is, let's say I write an article and I mention of a product, but I don't actually post that product in the blog post. You actually want to make sure that you're linking that. You actually want to add a URL back to that product, and maybe even from your product back to your blog post if it makes enough sense to do that, or a page. Those internal links will actually help you to improve your SEO because Google sees those pages as important. And when they see them as important, they see that they're related, and you have a higher chance of, okay, if someone searched for XYZ, then maybe ZYX will also show up in the ranking because they are related pages. So that's one piece that I would say that people don't do really well, is making sure that they're doing their internal links properly. And then the other thing that I would say, which is not in all relation to any of the apps that I run or anything, this is just what I've seen a lot of people doing wrong, is be careful when you want to touch your no indexing or your robots.txt file. So what Shopify recently made it so that you can actually edit your robots.txt file. And I don't recommend doing this because you can really remove your entire website from Google on accident, not even on purpose, and just by changing things around. But there's a lot of different things that people will go and futz with because they think that's what they're supposed to do and they just don't know how it works. So never add a no index to something unless you intend to get it off of Google completely, because you can't get that back for a long time if you do that on accident. But those are probably the top three things I would say be careful with, and that you should all be paying attention to.
Got it. How often have you seen or advised or helped clients that had maybe too many pages, a lot of old legacy stuff that wasn't relevant, either products or content sites, and really skinnied down their site, took a hatchet to it in terms of helping rankings? Have you seen that be a major kind of item at play for rankings, or not so much?
Yeah, I love this question. It's actually one of the reasons why I created Linking Llama, which is my latest app that I put out there, because we have a lot of customers on JSON LD for SEO who have told us in the past, oh, I've removed all my products that are discontinued. And I don't need them anymore, so I'm going to delete them. And it helps to clean up my Shopify site, and that way people aren't landing on pages they can't do anything with. The unfortunate side of that is that you've already earned so much SEO juice on those pages that you're just going to throw them away and have to start over. And if you would have instead kept those pages live, then you could just redirect people to a different page. And I don't mean redirect as in like create a redirect, make it go away. I mean, when someone lands on that discontinued page, they've already expressed interest in that. You can actually recommend them to an alternative product that might be a better fit for them, or the one that's actually in stock. So like, let's say, for example, I've had folks that are, they have products that are only a one product thing. It's a antique or something like that, where they don't have multiple sets. So it's common for them to delete that page and then they just get a 404 error. Well, that's a really big bummer for your customer because they think they're coming to your site looking for this antique product and they have nothing. But if you kept that page live and instead you said, this one's out of stock, it's discontinued, we don't intend to get it back, but here's another product that is very similar, that's another antique in the same, genre or whatever, and then people might go and purchase that one instead. So basically you're using the SEO that you've already built instead of essentially sabotaging yourself and having to start over every time you want to create a new page because you think that, Google doesn't care for old stuff. And that's not the case. Google doesn't, they love old content. You just have to make sure you're refreshing it and keeping it up to date. And if you're not going to keep it up to date, just make sure that you give them another option so they're not reaching a dead end. Google has never said to delete old content. I don't know who said to do that.
want to talk about, you have on your website a lot of language about kind of consider yourself a Shopify superhero and doing website rescues, which I love the language around that. We were talking a little bit before we hit record about this idea of a website redesign. Like I mentioned, I'm thinking about we're planning on doing a big redesign of the e-commerce fuel website. And I mean, I've probably done 6 to 8, it's been a few years, but across my career, 6 to 8 major website redesigns. And these things, we're talking like, you know, 6 to 9 month timeframes, 5-figure budgets, like meaningful redesigns or
Yeah.
launches. And sometimes they do really well. Sometimes you trade in what you think is like a dented Toyota, like my very first car I bought for $540, had a mouse in the heater, was two-toned, and just a total beater. And you trade it up for what you think is like a Land Rover, right? Like beautiful, gorgeous, shiny off a lot. And you get like a 4% bump in conversion, and your just head explodes. And you're like, what is going on? And then other times you either apocryphally or hear stories of other people, that just do some basic copy editing, and their conversions go through the roof. It's so, even having been through that so many times personally myself, the temptation to go through and trade the beat up Camry for the Land Rover is still so strong. I don't know what it is, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, on have you seen that as well? And if so, if someone wants to get, again, 80-20, 90-10 Pareto principle here, getting the most bang for their buck for a redesign without having to, hire a 6-figure designer, what does that look like? What are the things you focus on?
Yeah, so I definitely see that all the time. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that when you change your theme, even if you're going from like one version to another of the same theme, or you're actually going to a completely different theme altogether, any change to your theme like that can absolutely impact your SEO. So the larger the change, potentially the larger the impact. And many folks have been talking about going for Shopify. They're on 1.0 and they need to go to 2.0, for example, so that they have all the latest code, which I absolutely recommend that you should do. But don't do it right before a big event like Black Friday or something like that. Because these are not small changes. These are big changes that are happening in the theme and how your theme is structured. And it can absolutely alter the way that your site is indexed and shown up on Google. The biggest example that I can give is that many themes are moving away from the within collection code. So, like right now, if you go to a website that they have a collection and you click through to a product, if the URL says collection name products / product name, that's a within a collection. Many themes now are doing away with that, where they're getting rid of that collection URL altogether and it's just a product. That's reindexing your entire website. This is not a small thing. This could change everything for you. And so, yeah, absolutely. People often think of these giant, projects they want to do. I want to do a whole new beautiful website. I want to change my coloring, which is fine. No one cares about that, I promise you. But the content and the structure, the code structure that's behind everything, when that changes, it can absolutely impact you. And so that's one of the reasons why I created the website rescues many years ago, is to say, make small changes, do small bits here and there so that you're not going to feel these big impacts all at once. With that said, there are absolutely times where a large redesign is the right thing to do. And I can't tell you when that is for your business because every business is different. But like, yeah, if you're changing your business name or, you're rebranding altogether, maybe a full redesign does make sense. But if you're just doing minor tweaks here and there or content updates, just make them. Don't make it a big hoopla. Just make those changes. And then that way you can make sure that if anything happened in a negative way, what that change was, you can revert it back, right? You can always pull back. I made a content change and my entire page lost ranking. Well, great. Put the other content back on so that you get your ranking back up, and then you can make small changes and tweaks from there. But if you do a whole theme redesign and you push that out, it's much harder to roll that back if something happens with your traffic or ads completely tank because Google says that you're no longer showing the right information visually on the page or whatever. So be careful, definitely, with larger redesigns.
Yeah, I feel sometimes too like the copy. Copy is it sounds so easy to say, but I think it's easy to forget it as an owner. I have had this experience many times where I've gone to a website and I've started reading and I was drawn in and I was really interested. And it was only about like 3 or 4 minutes in, and I was like, this website looks awful. Like the design here is terrible. But they caught me so quickly with a headline or with copy that was engaging enough that it just really spoke to me in whatever place I was in or was looking for, a problem I had or dream, whatever it was. I didn't notice that the website was, a dented $570 Toyota. And so when I think about like, what's the 80/20 we could do on our website, I think copy would be one. This really speaks to pains, really understands
Yeah.
who you're connected with. And also just social proof testimonials, and especially live testimonials. That's one thing I'm trying to do a better job of, is get live testimonials from our members, because it's not very few things are as powerful as seeing a human who looks normal, just a person that could be just you talking about a product. The enthusiasm or lack thereof in the voice, it goes both ways too, right? You can get really have bad testimonials, but those are the two things I would focus on: live testimonial, little video clips, and great copy. And probably should do that before we go drop the big check on the redesign. So.
Well, and I would say too, when you do those video testimonials, I'm assuming that's what you mean by live testimonials. Make sure that you're putting the closed captioning on your video, so you actually edit the text that's there. And then, hot tip: also add the text to the body of your content, because that way that text that's being said in the video also shows up for search results. I mean, it's also a necessity for accessibility issues, but like if you have whatever's being said in the video also in the body of your content, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, because you get the content on your page and you have the video, so it helps you on both sides.
This seems like a perfect use case for markup. Is there a markup for like transcription if I embedded one of those where I don't necessarily, because let's say you get 20 of these on a web page, you don't want to put all the text there. Can you embed it in the schema or data, whatever the term is, so you don't have to put it all on the page?
So, well, the last part is where I'm going to catch you on it. You cannot mark up something that's not visually on the page as well. So you can't like just add the schema and not have anything else there. There is a schema markup for, it's called Speakable, but it's in beta, and it's been in beta, I think, for 4 years. So I'm not holding my breath. I've actually had people ask me to implement it on their website, but I haven't seen Google actually do anything with this. So Speakable actually really comes from like Alexa, for example, and whether or not like she reads off stuff. But I don't know that Google's actually doing anything with that at the moment. So unfortunately, there isn't a direct correlation to the structured data with regards to like whatever's being said in the video, other than if it's also written on the copy, then that would be part of your description that could be marked up as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Taking a little side detour from Shopify and e-commerce businesses per se, but we're all entrepreneurs here. I think it's fascinating to hear about other business models. You own and run a couple of Shopify apps. What's the good, bad, and the ugly about that business model? Like, obviously, I think a lot of times people on the e-commerce side of the world think, oh man, if I could just code, no cost of goods sold, infinitely scalable, it'd be amazing. And then I know people in the SaaS world that also, Ezra Firestone, a friend of mine, he has done both. And in his opinion, he's like, man, just stick to e-commerce. Like, you get a physical product. It's so easy to scale. When you manufacture them, you can crank them out. You've got APIs that break on the e-commerce side. You have developers. The talent's more expensive. So grass is always greener. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on running a very kind of bespoke niche Shopify app business. What's that like? Good, bad, and ugly?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have to agree with Ezra. Like, there's definitely times where it's exhausting running an app. And my background is not in development. My background is actually in human resources. And so I joined and I learned how to be a developer in 2018 when I joined the Shopify ecosystem. And it's not easy all the time. And I'm very grateful that my husband is a fantastic developer, because I always ask him questions that I need help with. And then the lovely ladies over at Design Packs, I often ask them for help too. But it's definitely a little bit more lonely in the app world, I think, because you don't know who your competitors are sometimes. And so like I want to post something out into like the Shopify Slack group for partners to ask for help, but you run the risk of your competitor being in there and you don't realize it and they could take stuff that you don't want to. Very similar to any other business though. Um, but I would say probably the absolute hardest part is something that Ezra touched on, in that the APIs that you're using, the code base that you're using and pulling from Shopify changes like every 6 months. And I'm not joking when I say every 6 months. It's all the time. So I actually just recently changed the cost of my app to be an annual plan. But one of the reasons why we had to go to an annual plan instead of a one time was because the cost of operating an app on Shopify is increasingly more and more expensive, because I'm constantly having to update and change the code. Even though my code's not changing, Shopify's side is. And so I'm constantly having to adjust that. So it's definitely much more risky with regards to the stability of what your app is doing, because it's not just I like with a theme. I could just say I'm never going to update the theme and I'm good, right? I don't have to worry about that. My code stays stable. But with Shopify and an app, they force you to make these upgrades all the time and update your code, um, which you're at their mercy if hoping that the code that they're making you update is good code. So it can definitely be a challenge from that side of things. But then you have the passive side, which is nice. That's one thing that's great is, I put out some code and I market my app and then people buy. And so I'm not constantly trading my time as you would if you're a service provider, like a consultant or whatever. I'm trading more of my knowledge and skill set and less of my time, which is really, I think, what ultimately people want to. I think that's what people say is like the beauty of apps, right? Well, once I get my app out that people just buy, I don't have to do anything. No, I'm not working with the customers necessarily, but I'm still marketing all the time and I'm constantly building the business. I don't just stop. You have to keep going. So it's like you said, it's the grass is always greener. Like I often think about opening an e-commerce store. I would love to be able to do that, but I don't have the knowledge or the capacity to be able to run an entire shipping process and open up a warehouse or anything like that. But you figure it out. So yeah.
Great. Well, Alana, thank you. This has been fascinating. I have a lot of work to do on our website for markup, for things like that. Super interesting to hear your take, especially on the technical side of SEO and the software business. Give people a sense before we dive in and wrap up with the lightning round here, what you can help people out with. Maybe you can give them a quick little recap of your two apps and the services you provide and where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first app is JSON LD for SEO. It creates structured data for your store to help you show up with search enhancements on Google. It also helps to provide all the information that you need for Merchant Center to get your ads approved. I would say that the biggest thing for folks with that one is that if you are not sure, or if you want to ask me, I know that there are a lot of customers as part of the e-commerce fuel community. But if you're never sure if your structured data is good, or if you want to see if the app could help you, email me at support@alanadavis.com and I'll do a free structured data audit if you're not a customer. If you are a customer, I'll check to make sure that your data looks good. The other app, Linking Llama, is really just about building internal links and making sure that when someone lands on a page, they're not landing on a dead end. So if the product's out of stock or if it's discontinued, you're giving them another option so that they're not kind of, okay, I have nowhere else to go, I'm going to leave and bounce off your site altogether. If you would like to get in touch with me, probably the best way to do that is my website. It's alanadavis.com. ILANA is my first name. Or Twitter, which I'm sometimes on there, but I'm not super great at posting random things. But yeah, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to do a structured data audit for anyone that needs it.
Amazing. And if you're in the forums, like I
Yeah.
said at the very top, she's been just phenomenal at weighing in on all sorts of stuff, especially technical SEO and related. So if you're willing, feel free to tag her as well. And she's been amazingly generous with her knowledge. So
Absolutely.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a quick little lightning round here to finish things off. I'll fire these at you, and feel free to just hit me with super fast, rapid fire answers back. First question: how would you describe the ecom environment right now in 1 to 3 words?
1 to 3 words. Um, shoot. Uh, Super fun and unknown. Like, I don't know. That's hard, 1 to 3 words. I think I'm not going to do it faster. I think it's challenging because we're heading into the holidays. There's a lot of folks that don't know what's coming up. We don't know how this holiday season is going to work. But then also it's, things are shifting as everyone's coming back to sort of their normal lives after the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of fun stuff that's happening with regards to like the growth that we're seeing within e-commerce, but also a lot of unknowns.
One of the fondest memories from your childhood?
um, I would say my parents used to own an old Apple store, like for Mac, and they used to sell like Apple IIe's and all that sort of thing. And I just remember being in their shop and being able to like clean the keyboards at the time. We would use Windex with like Q-tips, and it was the funnest thing in the world to us when we were like 9. And now we're like, this is terrible. But yeah, that was really cool. My parents owned an old Apple store that we used to be able to help
I thought you were going to say like, we got to play on the computers, or we got to network, but you're like, no, we got to clean the keyboards with Q-tips.
I mean, we did have computers. Like we were probably like, one of the few of our friends that actually had computers because my parents owned it. But yeah, we used to love cleaning the keyboards with Windex and Q-tips.
Love it. I believe you live in or around Portland right now. If you weren't living there, where would you live and why?
Probably Alaska, because I want to be able to bundle up and see the snow every single day.
Oh, wow. You and I are completely different people. Again, being in Portland, I'm guessing, I don't think they let you live within city limits unless you are a coffee aficionado. So what's your go-to coffee order and your favorite shop to get it at?
I actually gave up coffee a few months ago, which has been super depressing. But now I'll go, shamefully, it's still at Starbucks, but it's their double chocolate chip Frappuccino has been my go-to. It's like the one that you'll just like inhale for like 2 seconds and then you're done.
Portland allows Starbucks?
They do. I know.
It seems very against the Portland ethos.
I know. I don't live near, well, actually I do. I used to go to Fairlane Coffee quite often, which is another one that I would go to, but they don't do blended drinks, and it's been hot recently. So that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Nice. What's the hardest part of your business?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. I think the hardest part is my business, because the apps that I run depend a lot on Shopify and depend a lot on Google. And so there's a lot of things that are out of my control. I don't get to decide, when an update rolls out. Sometimes those updates roll out because I'm forced to. So I think that's probably the hardest part of when you do something because you have to, not because you want to.
Mm-hmm. How much money in the bank is enough? We ask this to everyone. This is kind of the probably the squirmiest question, but also the most interesting. And you can even either answer this either in terms of a lump sum. So if I had $5 million in the bank, if I didn't make any more, I'd be okay. Like obviously more is always nice, but if this is all I knew I had for the rest of my life, this would be enough. Either a lump sum or a guaranteed annual income for the rest of your life. Maybe it's $100,000, maybe it's $500,000, maybe it's $4 million, whatever it is. So how much money is enough?
That's so, Andrew, you're going to laugh at this response because that's really hard for me. And I'm sure you're going to see this correlation as how I participate in the community too. I don't think of money in that way. I don't do things for the sake of money. And so, I actually don't want a bunch of money. And so for me, it's like, I think about as long as I could pay my bills and I could put food on my table, I'm good. So I guess I would have to say like maybe, we budget like crazy too. So even if it's a lump sum, I don't know, but I just don't think of money in that way. So I couldn't even answer that question. Sorry.
That's all right. So, and I do this to everyone too. I get a lot of people punting and I always push back at least once. So
no, go for it.
Back once. So you mentioned like the budgeting and the thinking of food on the table and things like that. So if you think about budgeting and maybe a little bit of a safety margin or even the lump sum, like where would you feel just comfortable being able to cover those things? Because it sounds like that was where you'd feel good and with enough.
I mean, I'm not going to share my expenses and all that stuff, but like, I mean, really, it's just enough to live. So like, whoever you are, if your expenses are $3,000 a month, then that's what that would mean to me. Like I would need just enough to cover. If your expenses are $10,000 a month, then that's what I would need to live. We're not like a spend it sort of family. Like we like to save it all, and then eventually you'll use it at some point, but we just don't operate in that way. So I appreciate the pushback, but I generally don't have an answer other than like whatever is enough to live. It's not about all the other things that you need. Like we don't buy a bunch of toys or whatever.
Got it.
Yeah.
How many hours a week do you work?
Clocked work is probably around 30 hours of clocked work, but running your own business, there's a lot of times where you're not actually logging your time. So I would probably estimate somewhere up there between 40 and 45. For us, family is really important. So when we're done with work, we're done with work.
What's your number one hobby outside of work?
My Legos.
Legos.
I also
Nice.
crochet, but I have been terrible at doing that. I'm actually working on the Princess Peach doll. I already finished Bowser, and I'm working on Princess Peach right now. But I would say Legos is probably my favorite.
Nice. And then last question, who's one of the most more interesting people you've met through e-commerce? You've been a member for 6 months, and you don't have to have met them in person, but maybe it's just someone you've had a private message back and forth with. Maybe it's even someone who just in the forums you see posting that you appreciate or enjoy their contributions.
So oddly enough, it's Patrick, because I feel like the contribution that he gives in being able to like summarize everything in a concise way, but super friendly, and like I just feel like he really does such a fantastic job at like moderating and keeping everyone like engaged and moving forward. So I really appreciate the contribution that he has.
Yeah, a huge shout out to Patrick. He's our community manager and also has many other hats in the business. But
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. He's a phenomenal member on the team. So, well, Alana, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Again, alanadavis.com. We'll link up to those resources that Alana mentioned in the discussion. And thank you for coming on, being a part of the community, for dropping so much wisdom. And so good to have you here and in the forum. So
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks
you
for
being on
having
the
me.
show.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.